Why did Sri Ramakrishna not use yogic powers to cure his cancer? Hello everyone, I am Pulkit Mathur, founder of The Spiritual Bee, and as we learnt in our last video, the reason why an avatar, an incarnation of God like Sri Ramakrishna got cancer was not because he did some bad karma in his past life. Rather, the real reason why Sri Ramakrishna got cancer was because he, out of compassion, voluntarily took upon himself many of the sins of his disciples. Now, having understood the real cause behind Sri Ramakrishna's cancer, a follow-up question then arises, which is that why did Sri Ramakrishna not use his immense yogic powers to cure himself of his throat cancer? After all, he was an avatar, an incarnation of God, and so all the yogic powers of the universe were at his disposal. Why then did he not use these yogic powers to restore his health? Why did he have to go on suffering and ultimately give up his body in samadhi at a mere 50 years of age? There are three reasons for this, so let us go through them one by one. We shall go through two reasons in this video, and the third reason, which is the most important of them all, we shall leave for the next video. So the first reason why Sri Ramakrishna Paramhansa did not use yogic powers to cure his throat cancer has been detailed by the great sage himself. This reason has been faithfully documented by Sri Ramakrishna's direct disciple Swami Abhedananda in his book Ramakrishna Kathamrita. Swami Abhedananda documents that after Sri Ramakrishna contracted throat cancer, one day a Pandit by the name of Shashadhar came to pay his respects to Sri Ramakrishna. Seeing his illness, the Pandit asked Sri Ramakrishna, Bhagwan, why don't you concentrate your mind on your diseased throat and thus cure your cancer? Pandit Shashadhar, being well versed in the scriptures, had read that yogis had the power to cure themselves in this way. Sri Ramakrishna replied, How can I withdraw my mind from the lotus feet of God and turn it to focus on this cage of flesh and blood? Pandit Shashadhar was not dissuaded. He then suggested that if Sri Ramakrishna did not want to use his yogic powers to cure his own illness, he should pray to the Divine Mother of the universe to do so. Sri Ramakrishna replied, When I think of the Divine Mother, the physical body vanishes for me completely as I am entirely out of it, and so it is impossible for me to pray for anything concerning the body. After hearing this, Pandit Shashadhar stopped his line of questioning and bowed before Sri Ramakrishna and left. So what Sri Ramakrishna was conveying through this conversation was that he did not want to turn his mind away from its absorption in God consciousness and make it focus on the ills of the body. He had always taught his disciples that the body is impermanent. Then why go through so much trouble for the sake of something which will perish one day? Why not focus the mind on the imperishable, on the deathless and the eternal, that is on God himself? So it was on account of his steadfast and unbreakable nishtha or devotion to God that Sri Ramakrishna refused to bring his mind down to the level of the body and focus his yogic powers on curing its ills. The second reason why Sri Ramakrishna Paramhansa did not use his yogic powers to cure his own throat cancer is a little deeper. And this reason is that although an avatar like Sri Ramakrishna has transcended the law of karma and is in reality the ruler and master of it, still avatars like Sri Ramakrishna do not like to upset the balanced workings of the law of karma unnecessarily. Therefore, they choose to work within the limits of the law. Note that the key word here is choose. Avatars can override the law of karma at a mere wish, but they choose not to. To understand this point better, consider the analogy of a king who goes to a market in his kingdom. While walking in the market, the king sees a poor man who is very hungry. The king takes the man to a nearby stall and buys him some samosas. When the time comes to pay, the stall owner tells the king that there is no need to pay, for it was his pleasure to have served the king. But the king, however, insists on making the payment because he does not want to set the wrong example before his subjects. The king did not want his subjects to think that just because he was the king he was above the law and therefore could get away without making any payments. For if the king set such an example before his people, then pretty soon other ministers and high-ranking officials in his cabinet too would be tempted to accept the freebies and favors from his subjects. and the just and orderly functioning of the kingdom would be disrupted, with the kingdom transforming into a den of corruption where bribery flourishes. So the king paid his due and refrained from accepting a favor from the samosa seller. The avatar too takes a position similar to the king. The avatar, out of compassion, certainly removes the sins of certain worthy disciples. However, in order to avoid setting the wrong precedents before society, he chooses to pay for these sins himself by absorbing their karmic effects into himself. In this way, the avatar does not upset the just and balanced functioning of the law of karma and himself pays the price of the bad deeds done by his disciples. This, of course, is a choice that the avatar makes. Having taken birth in the earthly realm, he or she willingly accepts the limitations of the law of karma and chooses to stay within these limits instead of transcending them. By doing so, the avatar avoids the public display of supernatural powers because such extraordinary displays usually cause tremendous harm to devotees by setting before their weak and undeveloped minds exactly the wrong precedents. For example, if morally weak devotees see an avatar performing unrestrained forgiveness of past karmas of each and every person, they will feel emboldened to commit all sorts of sins with impunity because they will think that they only need to approach the avatar and all their past misdeeds will be forgiven, and they will not have to bear the karmic repercussions of their bad actions. If such a thing happens, the whole of society will soon be overrun by criminals. Yet another set of morally weak devotees, at the sight of such displays of supernatural powers by avatars, will find awakening in themselves the greed for possession of such supernatural powers with which they could increase their possessions, wealth, and control. Their minds flooded with unrestrained greed, these devotees would fall off from the path of God realization. So avatars and great sages, keeping the spiritual well-being of devotees and of human society in mind, choose not to indulge in supernatural displays of powers and instead willingly work within the limitations of the spiritual laws such as the law of karma, which constrain and bind ordinary people. Now the third and the most important reason why Sri Ramakrishna did not use yogic powers to cure his own cancer but instead chose to withdraw into his subtle body and work from there, we shall cover this reason in the next video. Until then, take a moment to visit the Spiritual Bee website where you can find many more articles on the life and teachings of Sri Ramakrishna and also join the daily quote service so that you can cleanse and purify your mind with the spiritual knowledge of the rishis. Thanks for watching and I shall see you in the next video.